So usually the things we value most are things that are important to us and are for our general well-being. Now, this man, John Rawls, put forth a theory, ethical theory of justice. When making policies, he claimed that you needed to adapt the persona that you wouldn't know what your lot in life was going to be, that you could be born without limbs, you could be born as an athlete, you could be born poor, you could be born rich, you could be born a genius, you could be born mentally disabled. He said the importance of this was that when you started putting forth policies, you needed to take into consideration everyone's general well-being, and that adopting this position would allow you to make policies that reflected this. Now, lately we've passed a policy which has come under some heat, which is universal health care. So today you'll be learning why, as an American, universal health care is your right by definition, why it's economically sound, and why it's in your best interest. Now, the purpose of the Constitution for general well-being, the purpose of the Constitution is for the general well-being of the public. Now, we have policies, or we have rights such as education, and the purpose of this is for your general well-being. Same case can be made for healthcare. Healthcare is in your general well-being. Now, one argument that's used against this is usually that the Bill of Rights is a list of things that the government has promised not to infringe on, and that it's not for services or material goods which the government has promised to provide you. Now, the problem with this, though, is that this argument fails to make a distinction between rights. What it discusses, the purpose for the government is that it only provides a promise of rights that they will not take away from you, which are negative rights, but it doesn't discuss the issues of positive rights. Now, earlier I talked about education. The right to education is a positive right. Same thing as the right to protection, military, police, law, or the right to communication, such as the postal service. These are all positive rights, and in the same light, universal health care fits into this. So by denying universal health care, you're denying that the government should not provide any positive rights whatsoever. Also, universal health care, or the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights, claims that everyone has the right to a standard of adequate living and health in the pursuit of their well-being. So not only is this your right as a citizen of the United States, but this is your right as a person, that the whole developed world has decided that this is entitled to you. Now, another issue with healthcare is that it's not economically sound, that if we have universal healthcare, that it's going to bankrupt our economy, or it's going to it's going to be a burden on you as the taxpayer. In 2007, 62.1% of all Americans who claimed bankruptcy was related to medical expenses, and of the 78% of those, they all had medical insurance. Now, another issue with that is that the healthcare system should be driven by the free market. Now, the issues with this are that the healthcare system, in particular the hospitals, are only controlled for the most part by two main franchises, which are Blue Cross and Kaiser. I'm sure most of you can't even name a third major franchise for hospitals. Now the problem with this is that since it is dominated mostly by two hospitals, that when these hospitals decide to raise premiums, it increases it for everybody. The insurance company has little to no say in that, because they're basically being bullied into adopting that as well. Another reason why it is economically sound is that by providing healthcare, you produce longer lives, and that shorter lives will cost the government up to anywhere from $65 to $103 billion annually, which is being passed on to you once again as the taxpayer. But also other reasons why these policies should be enacted is that for years, countries such as Canada and other countries such as Sweden have shown that for decades they've been able to afford universal health care while maintaining a budget that is better than ours. Another a couple surveys have shown that the majority of people are willing to not only willing to say that healthcare is your right, but that they're willing to pay extra taxes to afford you healthcare. Now, the reasons why it should be important to you are that the U.S. is the only developed nation in the world that does not have, or we finally do have, universal health care. Out of 27 countries, we rank 23rd on life expectancy for infants. We have the highest infant mortality rate, and we also rank 31st for overall life expectancy. Now, countries with healthcare tend to have also better maternity policies. They've also have lower abortion rates, and they also have things such as birth control covered. One issue with healthcare also seems to be that people are afraid that they're going to have to wait longer to see a doctor or a physician. And the thing is that it's true that you may have to wait a little bit longer, and this does scare people because they're afraid that they might have some kind of terminal illness and that they may die waiting. But the thing is that in these countries that do have it, they've shown that people are more likely to go before these fatal incidences occur, and that they're detected earlier. So, in conclusion, today you've learned why it is your right, not just as a citizen, but as a human, to have health care, and why you should not only be afraid, or not afraid to have it, but also why it's in your best interest economically to have it.
Maxine, you here? Hang on a second, Stephen. All right, Stephen, I think the opening is a little bit broad. You're dealing with the issue of social justice and whether or not there's an implied right to health care and I think, okay, this is an interesting idea. And then later on, you kind of switch to what the benefits of it would be. Okay, and that's a more practical approach to what you're talking about. I think you also make an argument about the economic benefits. I think you need to have a little bit more focus on which point you want to talk about, because although those other points might be interesting and they certainly are worthy of some kind of discussion, it feels to me like you're just kind of skimming over each of those points without really developing them there very much. For example, in the section where you talk about the cost issues, you basically assert that all these other countries have done this without any economic negative consequences, and I don't have any data on that. I don't have any authorities who talk about that. Basically, you're just saying Canada and Sweden are in great shape, and that's about as much information as I get on this particular point. Well, that's one of those big criticisms, how much money this is all going to cost, and you skip over that with a single sentence. I don't think that you can answer that argument with a single sentence that doesn't provide any proof in it. And there are lots of places where you're doing the same sort of thing in the body of the speech. Like I said, I thought that the earlier argument on justice and rights and all those kinds of things, I think you've got a good value argument built in there, and you've got the right idea. I just think it needs to be developed a little bit more. Your presentation, the pacing feels a little bit deliberate sometimes. Occasionally, like you needed to rehearse a little bit more. You were a little bit uncertain of what was coming up next. And I think at this point it should all be coming a lot more smoothly. I did see a shortage of data on some of the points. You did have some interesting material, for instance, about the standard of living or the mortality rates in different countries, and you seem to be connecting it to the healthcare system. For instance, you mentioned that we're the only ones that don't have this universal healthcare system, and we're 23rd. Okay, well then, why did this system come ahead of the other 140? And behind the 22 or 23 that are in front of it? You seem to make the assumption that it's because of the absence of a universal healthcare system, and I think I need to see a little bit more information about that. Because if all the others have universal healthcare systems, well, we came in front of some of them and behind some of them. So, what's the explanation? And the assumption that it's just because of universal healthcare is, it's self-fulfilling. You need to offer some reason and proof on those particular points. All right, thank you.